My name is Diane Cole, and I want to tell you about the morning I was discharged from the hospital after 28 days and drove straight to my father's house and found a sale pending sign in the front yard. I had a key in my coat pocket that I had kept with me the entire time I was in that hospital bed, through 2 surgeries and 3 weeks of physical therapy, because it was the one object I had from my life outside those 4 walls, and I was not going to let it go. It was the key to the house where my father Gene still lived at 71, the house I had grown up in. The house my father had asked me specifically to watch over because he understood his mind was beginning to slip and he trusted me with the papers in a way he trusted no one else. I stood in that driveway with the sale pending sign in my sight line and the key in my hand, and I understood immediately what my brother Marcus had done. I did not know yet exactly how he had done it, but I work in real estate title. I close property transactions for a living. I have run more title searches than I can count. I know what a sale pending sign means in a driveway that I did not authorize and that my father, alone and in early stage Alzheimer's, could not have authorized without someone moving the pen. What I found when I started pulling the records is why I am sitting here telling you this story. Welcome to NS Revenge Stories, where we tell quiet, true-to-life stories about the moment someone discovers that the person who moved while they were down left a paper trail. If you have ever been treated as a problem to manage around rather than a person to protect, this story is yours. Subscribe below and drop a comment telling me where you are watching from. I read every one. Let me take you back far enough to understand why Marcus believed he could do this. I was the younger sibling by 5 years. In our family, that gap meant 2 different childhoods under the same roof. Marcus had arrived first and worn the name Cole in every room before I was born to complicate the count. My father loved us both, and I believe that entirely. But love and priority are not the same thing, and Marcus had been the priority long enough that he had stopped noticing it, the way a person stops noticing a room temperature they have always lived in. I was the one who read the fine print. I was the one who at 16 caught the automatic renewal clause in a storage unit lease before it cost my mother 3 months she could not afford. I was the one who grew genuinely interested, as an adult, in the language of property, in the chain of title that connects every owner of a piece of land from the first recorded deed to the present, in the way of full title search surfaces every lien, every encumbrance, every claim that has ever attached itself to a piece of ground. I became a closing coordinator at a title company because I liked that property had a public record and the record did not negotiate. Marcus became someone who trusted that record would never matter to someone who could read it. My father's diagnosis came 18 months before my accident. Early stage Alzheimer's. A phrase that sounds almost gentle until you understand what early stage means, which is that the fog has started and there is no clearing. It comes and goes at first, a good morning and a lost afternoon, a conversation that holds for 40 minutes and then loops back to its beginning. My father was 71, and he had always been a meticulous man, and the thing that frightened him most was not the disease itself, but the documents he could no longer trust himself to read with the precision he had once brought to everything. He asked me to take over his financial and property documents. Not Marcus. Me. He said it at his kitchen table on a Sunday afternoon in the fall with his coffee going cold because he had forgotten it was there. He said, "Diane, I need you to be the one who watches the papers. Marcus means well, but he does not read the way you read." I told him I would. I told him nothing important would happen without my knowing. I meant it. I did not know I would spend the next 28 days in a hospital bed while Marcus used that promise against me. The accident was in January. Black ice on an overpass, a car that came from the left before I could correct, 2 surgeries in 4 days, and then 3 weeks of recovery that I remember in pieces because the pain medication made the edges of time unreliable. I had my phone. I kept in contact with my office when I could. And I kept my father's key in the small zip compartment of my hospital bag where I kept my most important things, and I checked it every day the way some people check a photograph, to confirm it was still there. Marcus visited me twice. The first time was the week I was admitted. He brought flowers from the hospital gift shop and stood at the end of the bed with the posture of a man fulfilling an obligation and left after 22 minutes. The second visit was the third week. He sat in the chair beside my bed and told me not to worry about Dad, that he was handling things, that I should focus on recovering. He said it warmly. That warmth was the signal I missed. Marcus was not warm by nature. Warmth from Marcus meant something was already in motion, and he needed me to stay where I was. I drove from the discharge facility to my father's house the morning I was released. I did not stop at my apartment first. I wanted to see him. I turned onto a street, and I saw the sign before I saw the house, and I sat in the car with the engine running for about 15 seconds before I parked. My father was in the kitchen when I came in. He was in his chair by the window with his morning coffee, and he looked up at me with the expression he had developed since the diagnosis, part recognition and part the careful effort of assembling it, and he said, "Diane, you look thin." I said I had been in the hospital, Dad. He said yes, Marcus had told him about the accident. He said he was glad I was home. I asked him if he knew the house was for sale. He looked at me for a long moment. Then he said I signed something. Marcus said it was just paperwork. I kept my voice very even. The way I keep my voice at a closing when something in the documentation is wrong and I need the room to stay calm while I work out what to do about it. I asked him what kind of paperwork. He said he thought it was something about managing his things. He said Marcus had brought someone with a stamp. He said it had been on a Thursday. I asked which Thursday. He looked at the window. He said he didn't remember which Thursday. He said his coffee was good that morning. I stayed long enough to make sure he had lunch and the television on the right channel. Then I drove to my office. Not because I was officially back to work. Because the title search database was what I needed and I could not think about anything else until I had it open in front of me. If you are watching this and someone has tried to take something from you during the window when they believed you were too damaged to catch them, drop a comment below. Because there is a particular cold anger that comes not from the attempt itself, but from the calculation behind it. The belief that a hospital bed was enough to make you safe to take from. And subscribe to NS Revenge Stories before you read the next part, because the records I pulled that afternoon are the reason this story ends the way it does. I ran the title search the way I run every search. Standard process. Systematic. I was looking for any recorded instrument filed against my father's property in the last 4 weeks that I had not seen before. It was there. A power of attorney. Recorded the 3rd week of January. Executed by Gene Cole, witnessed by 2 parties, notarized, granting Marcus Cole full authority to act on Gene Cole's behalf in all real property matters. Recorded 2 days after my second surgery when I was on strong pain medication and not reading anything. I printed it. I looked at the notarization block. Notary name, commission number, county, signature, date, and time of acknowledgement. I cross-referenced the commission number against the state notary registry. Valid. Real person. But the date listed on the acknowledgement was a Thursday, and the time listed was 10:30 in the morning. And I knew that Thursday. Before my accident, I had organized every appointment in my father's care calendar. His standing neurology appointment was on Thursdays, 9 to noon, because that practice ran long and my father needed the time. I still had access to the appointment confirmation emails. I opened them on my phone. The Thursday listed on the POA notarization was the same Thursday as his most recent neurology appointment. The email confirmation showed check-in at 9:05. My father could not have been in 2 places at 10:30 on a Thursday morning. He was at his neurologist. And the document notarized to give Marcus authority over his property listed a time that placed it in the middle of that appointment. I printed the appointment confirmation. Then I looked for the second issue, the one I had been carrying in the back of my mind since I turned onto my father's street and saw the sign. For years ago, my father had asked me to help him establish a small home equity line of credit to cover some repairs to the foundation and the roof. I had handled the documentation myself. I knew what was on record. The line of credit was paid down, but the lien had never been formally released because the account was still technically open. That lien would appear in any thorough title examination as an encumbrance against the property. A sale cannot close with an unreleased lien unless it is addressed. Addressing it required contact with the lender and a release instrument. The lender would need my signature on the release because I had been the co-executor of the original credit application, a detail that had been entered correctly into the county records when I handled it 4 years ago. Marcus would have had no way to know this unless he had run a title search himself. And he had not. I knew he had not because if he had, he would have found my name on the lien documentation and understood that the sale he had arranged could not close without me. I had one more document to check. Before my accident, at my father's request, I had prepared and recorded a memorandum of agreement confirming my role as his designated property advisor, with explicit written authority over any real property decisions affecting his primary residence. Not a power of attorney. A memorandum recorded in the county public records 6 months before the POA Marcus had arranged, establishing clearly and in the public record that no sale of this property was to proceed without my written consent. A subsequently recorded instrument that conflicts with a prior recorded memorandum creates a title dispute. The title company handling the pending sale would surface that conflict in their examination. The sale, as structured, could not close. I had 3 documents. The POA with a notarization that placed it at the same time as my father's neurology appointment. The undisclosed lien with my name on the originating documentation. And my prior recorded memorandum establishing my authority over any property decision. I printed all 3. I want to see Marcus that evening. I want to be honest about the temperature of that visit. I was not angry in the way that shows. I have spent 12 years in rooms where a transaction is about to go wrong and where the way I carry myself determines whether the room stays manageable. I keep my voice about 10 degrees below my actual internal state. That evening my internal state was quite cold and my voice was 10 degrees below that. Marcus opened the door and I watched his face run through 3 expressions in about 1 second. Surprise, then adjustment, then relief. Not relief that I was recovered. Relief that I was here, because he had been waiting for this conversation and had decided he could manage it. He said, "Diane, you are out. Come in, I will make coffee." I said I did not need coffee. I said I needed him to tell me about the power of attorney. He told me about it the way people tell you about something they believe you cannot challenge. He said our father had needed someone to manage his affairs while I was unavailable. He said he had done everything properly. He said the word properly twice. He said someone had to step up. And then he said the sentence he had rehearsed. You were in a hospital bed for a month, Diane. Someone had to make decisions. I did what Dad needed. You were never going to be there when it mattered. I let the sentence land. I let the silence run for 4 seconds. Long enough for a person who believes they've won to start feeling the room shift. Then I said, Marcus, on the Thursday the POA was notarized. Dad had his neurology appointment from 9 until noon. The notarization lists 10:30. I have the confirmation email. Which Thursday was the notary actually there? Silence. He said it might have been a different Thursday. He said he would need to check. He said the notary was a professional. I said I also pulled the title search. There is an open lien on the property from a home equity line 4 years ago. Unreleased. My name is on the originating documentation. The sale cannot close without a release instrument with my signature. And there is a recorded memorandum from before your POA establishing my authority over property decisions. For seconds. 5. He said he had not known about a lien. I said, I know. That is what matters. I asked him to come to Sunday lunch at our father's house. Not a confrontation scene. A kitchen table with food on it, and our father at the head of it on a good morning. Marcus arrived with the posture of someone who has had 6 days to rearrange a story and still cannot find an arrangement that holds. I had 3 documents at my place at the table. I set them out without drama, the way I lay out a file at a closing. The POA first, with the notarization date and time circled in red. Beside it, the neurology appointment confirmation, time-stamped. The conflict between the two was visible without explanation, and I did not offer one. The title search report second, with the open lien highlighted and my name on the originating instrument marked. And third, the recorded memorandum, with its filing date, which predated the POA by 6 months and which established in the county's permanent public record that no sale of this property was to proceed without my written consent. My father looked at the documents. He looked at Marcus. He said, I do not remember a notary on a Thursday morning. I had my doctor that Thursday. He said it with the particular clarity he had on good mornings, the clarity of a man who knew his memory was unreliable and was therefore careful with the things he did remember. He said, I would have remembered if it was the same day as the doctor. Marcus said, I was trying to take care of things. My father said, you were trying to take the house. It was the clearest sentence he had said in weeks. The kitchen was very quiet. The sale unwound over the following 3 weeks. The title company's examination flagged the lien and the recorded memorandum conflict. The buyer withdrew. The listing was canceled. The agent who had been misled about the documentation was significantly unhappy about it in a direction facing Marcus. The power of attorney documentation was referred to the county attorney's office based on the timing discrepancy. I filed the report. I do not know what comes of it. What has already come of it is that my father's house is still my father's house. On the Sunday after the sale was officially canceled, I drove to that house and I used the key I had kept in my hospital bag for 28 days, and I opened the front door and I stood in the hallway for a moment. Rosemary. Wood polish. The smell of a house that had been there since before I could remember, and that is still there. Still his. Marcus and I do not have the relationship we had before. I would not call this loss. I would call it accuracy. The relationship is now the size of what it actually was, which turns out to be smaller and more honest than what we had pretended to have for years. My father and I have Sunday lunches every week. I manage his documents. His coffee is almost always still warm when I arrive. Here is what 12 years of closing real estate titles taught me. The person who moves against you when you are down always leaves a record. They leave it because they believe you will not look, because they have spent years assuming you are the sibling who does not read the fine print. They do not realize that the fine print is the one thing they cannot take from you. The chain of title is always there. The recorded memorandum is always there. The appointment confirmation is always there. You just have to know where to pull. Type the word key in the comments below if this story found you. And subscribe to NS Revenge Stories because the next one is already waiting. I will see you there.